How do you do? How's it going? My name's Philip, and this is a video for TimeLords magazine. I'm so grateful for the opportunity to share with you. This is one of the most exciting periods of our lives, no matter when you were born, because we have such revolutionary energies taking place for us to maximize and make the most of. Today, I'm going to be sharing about the ingress of Uranus into Gemini from Taurus, where it's been for the past 7 years, since 2018. But the aspect I'm going to feature today is so cool because we have this revolutionary, paradigm shattering against the grain Uranus, which is so alternative. It brings things that are a little bit unexpected from a higher perspective. Unexpected things that give us a great awakening. Whereas it's going to be in harmony in the air signs, making an air trine to Pluto in Aquarius. Well, firstly, Uranus rules Aquarius in modern astrology, but also Aquarius is like the root chakra, and Uranus is like the crown chakra. And so to have this very intellectual perspective on our subconscious shadows or the hidden occult world, as well as a technological revolution of sorts of conscious awareness. There's so many potentials for change in this aspect. Now, this 120-degree trine, which I'm going to be sharing on the screen with you, actually perfects 5 times. And it comes close many more times than that over the course of 5 years. Yeah, they're going to be within orb for about 5 years. I like to use a fairly tight orb for the most part, maybe 6 degrees for this trine. However, I'm going to include up to 10 degrees for this video because they broaden that far and then they come really close again. And we're going to go all the way up to 2030. Although Uranus is going to be in Gemini a lot longer and Pluto also will be in Aquarius a lot longer. It's 20 years for Pluto, 7 years for Uranus. We're just going to be looking at this aspect as it builds to 2030, where we have the opposition of Saturn and Jupiter, which only recently had their opening square of their 20-year cycle. So we're going to feature 5 years in this video. So excited to be sharing with you. Thank you for your presence. Now, without any further hullabaloo, I'm going to share on the screen the ingress first of Uranus into Gemini, and then we'll move from there and look at those 5 perfections. I would actually, before I like to share on the screen, I want to share a little bit of what potentials could go on as well, and that is that we're talking about a great awakening. So we're talking about shifts in consciousness, in intellect, and we're going to be looking at things like can change our paradigm in a really powerful way. We recently were looking at the pyramids and rediscovering what they could have been used for. A lot of metaphysicians, spiritual workers, have concluded similar things, that there were powerful spiritual places in the past rather than, in a sense, built by slaves, which was what we were taught in our educational systems. Maybe we're having a bit of a cosmological shift as well, because we're able to look at different things from the past and really look at the truth from the current and see where we're at. One of the things that could be happening is looking into continents, forgotten continents, or even subterranean worlds can be rediscovered through these times. But also, what's very interesting is the potential of the cryptocurrency, because we're seeing the culmination of Uranus in Taurus. And there's been some really powerful shifts. I mean, cryptocurrency's been around for, almost 20 years now. Like, I think I first saw that there was some coins, what was it, 2012, something like this. And so there's become normal. It's the new normal. We're refashioning what's outside the box by bringing it inside the box with a lot of these energies since the Great Conjunction in Aquarius, since Pluto went into Aquarius. And this is going to pick up the pace rapid for us to have lots of different shifts. So I would imagine that changing a lot of the ideas about how the world works from behind the scenes. Maybe a lot of the leaders of the world are going to be ousted, and we'll see that the world will be more run by closed door corporate leaders. Um, this lots of different ideas about how this energy can work out. Is that Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio, the ruler of the occult, which is about the a lot of trauma. Uh, it's also about the releasing and the healing and the illuminating of darkness through medicine. And a lot of the medicine has been forbidden, like astrology. It evolves the soul, does the ability to see these archetypes. Evolutionary astrology is ruled by Pluto. But other medicines that have been forbidden have been like the plant medicine, like the ayahuasca or even the mushrooms. And a lot of these have been made more available in different constituencies and more acceptable through the eyes of the normal rather than being restricted. So this can bring a lot of change, and even our sexuality and our sexual medicine and how we connect in traditional templates with ourselves and others can be becoming more open to discuss and to talk about, because there's been a lot of dogma on the body and a lot of shame and ridicule on sexuality and a lot of sexual trauma and a lot of it being used for crime as well. Pluto also rules crime. So the very best for these, if we talk about the most positive and the most negative before I bring it on the screen, the most negative to start with would be like a more Orwellian style future coming pretty quickly. The likes of that which we saw with the COVID scenarios with the lockdown of the world was very traumatic for people. But I know that there's certain agendas which are freely available to be looked at on Wikipedia, like Agenda 2030, where there's plans to make the world more of a squeeze from the corporations which choose to run the world, to say the very least. However, without going into uh, that any further, that's one angle of it. Another angle would be greater connection. Rather than alienation and going into the computers and being void of creativity by being a consumer, constantly consuming, disconnected, staying home, getting everything delivered to your door, that's the most negative outcome that one could see. But the greatest outcome would be more communities connecting in tribe, in nature, being self-sufficient, not needing a mummy or daddy government to take care of us. And that's an ideal that some people might choose to live and demonstrate and revel within and thrive within. Some people might thrive in a dystopian Orwellian style pattern too. I think that it's free choice, right? And so we will see the diversity of both, and there'd be people who could enter both, like Robin Hood and Maid Marian, who are able to go into an Orwellian style city, a Matrix style city, and they'll be able to create from that space. Either way, we're here to navigate that, and we have so much in our favor, and it's the most exciting thing. So let me share on the screen, and we'll go from there. Right, firstly, I want to show you the ingress of uh, Uranus into Gemini and just go through that with you. So, first and foremost, um, it's actually the 7th of July when Uranus makes its ingress, and it's given a signature because on the 3rd and 4th of July, we have Venus making a conjunction with Uranus. And Venus will make a conjunction with Uranus once a year. It's almost annual, there or thereabouts, depending if Venus will retrograde. And so it's interesting that Venus rules Taurus, where Uranus has been since 2018. And at this culmination on the anaretic degree, Venus makes a new cycle with Uranus, which is going to be really interesting for our financial world and so many different parts of our experience, no doubt. And it's just 3 days later that Uranus joins Venus in Gemini. But upon the ingress, Venus trines Pluto, Venus sextiles Saturn and Neptune. So we get a kind of pattern signature as soon as the ingress of any planet into Gemini, and they're all going to make those aspects at this time. but Uranus is so much more slow moving. And so it doesn't get into the perfection of these aspects. And we're going to look at the ones of Pluto. So it is actually that Uranus will move forward and not from this point, and it stations retrograde. I think it's the 5th of September. So let's have a look at that. It goes all the way up to 1 degree and 27 bits. And yet Pluto stations, it's been retrograde since May. So Pluto's already coming back to Uranus, and Uranus is moving forward to Pluto, which is very interesting. And as I said, it's about the 5th of September that we have Uranus station retrograde, and it's at 127, whereas Pluto is at 141. So they actually, with Pluto still moving backwards, they become a little bit more close here. I think they get that close, and that's the closest they will get, or there or thereabouts. I think it's like Pluto goes to 2030. They're so close, but they start moving apart again. And so that's incredibly close on the 22nd of September, but they don't perfect. So the first perfection of this aspect, although Uranus is going to be retrograde until the 7th of November, going all the way back into Taurus, it goes all the way back to 27 degrees and 27 bits of Taurus, not stationing direct until February. And so then it will take the remainder of its stay until April the 25th to go through those last few degrees of Taurus, by which time Venus will come back into Taurus and play this signature out again, which happens in a couple of weeks, just before the first ingress, as I said, on the 3rd and the 4th of July. And so this is very interesting that it happens twice at the same degree, just before the change of the sign. And so this is actually the 23rd of April. As you see, Venus goes into Gemini, and then Uranus follows on the 25th, 26th of April. And then it will stay in Gemini, mutable air, for the next 7 years. And so very powerful it is. When we talk about Gemini, it's the marketplace. It's about trading and exchanging. It's bridges of communication. We could even see changes in how we communicate, not just with technology, but with the organic nature of our own consciousness, maybe more intuitively guided communication like telepathy or something like that. Interesting it is. The funny thing is about this cycle between Uranus and Pluto is that it was actually seeded in 1966. The pair were in Virgo for quite some time. If you think back to 1966, that was the time of the music, like the Beatles and the hippie movement and the culture where, they said there was a lot of people taking drugs like acid, which is a psychoactive component, which is very occult because it actually can bring medicine and healing to a lot of areas of our consciousness. And so these people travel. A lot of people, when I see people with this signature in the natal chart of Pluto, Uranus together in Virgo, I'll say, oh, maybe you were, you know, you might have been chastised for sharing your truth in previous experiences, either when you were younger, or you could even say past life, if you will. Maybe you were a witch or burnt at the stake or a magician or just an astrologer, or maybe you were a high priestess, maybe you were a healer of some kind of modality of one of these sacred medicines, and yet you were stopped from sharing that medicine. And so you're scared to speak up and do it again in this lifetime, but yet you overcome that fear to truly express that truth, which has come to be expressed, to share that medicine that's necessary to be received. I've spoken to so many clients who've had that over the years. But this is the signature. So the seed was sown in 1966. They did meet a few times in that transit of Virgo, but that was the most recent one, the last one. And so now when they meet, when they have 120 degrees apart, it's like the fruiting of the season. If an opening square is the end of the spring, and then you move into like the summer of that seed that was sown, this is where the fruit is born of that Uranus Pluto season cycle. And so it is actually upon the second ingress of Uranus, which is, as we've looked at, the 26th of April or the 25th of April, 2026, we shall then very soon have our first perfection of Uranus and Pluto. It's actually at 4 degrees and 29 bits. Uh, so here we go. That's taking place on July the 18th. And so that's these dates can be particularly radical ones, especially if we was to look back after having lived these experiences from 2030 or any time after 2030. We're like, oh, that's when that took place. That's when they stopped using paper money. That's when they stopped using coins. That's when this country broke up and didn't name itself that country anymore. They changed the country. They changed the state. That's when we got this new technological advancement or whatever it may have been that awakened us to this, that, or the other. We can be awakening to different things that have been hidden for us, which have been people have been aware of for quite some time, like the heritage of humanity, or various different things. They've talked about doing blue beam and harp, all of these technologies that show different things, and all of these things can be a potential in this reality. But also, we want to look at just the marketplace changing because that's the basics of Gemini. It's about how we trade and how we exchange. So that's a big potential too. The next perfection will be in November, and this time they swap. Uranus will be retrograde, whereas Pluto is direct. And this is taking place at 29th of November, at slightly earlier degrees. We have it at 3 degrees and 31 bits. And so again, that's very interesting. The first time that they come in, we have both of them sextile Saturn and Neptune. So it's very constructive because they're 60 degrees in between this 120-degree trine. So that's something of note. It's interesting to actually break down and look at the charts of all the position of all the other planets at each of these perfections. Don't have time for that in this video, but we can see just very quickly that we have the South Node and Jupiter in Leo. Both of them in aspect to Chiron in Aries. Chiron's soon to go into Taurus at this point. So very interesting times when we're looking at that in just a flash of a moment, but it would take a little bit more consideration to really feel into those energies. And we will, and I shall, in the coming weeks and months. So Uranus will be direct and Pluto retrograde in our next perfection of the trine, which takes place on June the 15th, 2027. And this one takes place at 6 degrees and 52 bits. And so we're moving on into the air sign. If you've got placements in the early first decan of these air signs, then you know that they're going to be activated. Personally, I've got my ascendant 14 degrees of Libra, and that's the earliest I can see that it's going to aspect me. But you might know personally that it aspects you in different ways. So yeah, it's 6 degrees 52 bits that we have this trine taking place the second time. Excuse me, it's the third time. We have 2 more perfections to look at, as well as 2 more close calls. It will be a similar degree, slightly earlier than this, that our next one takes place, with Uranus retrograde and Pluto direct. And this one won't take place until January the 13th, 2028. Feels like we're rifling through time, going so quickly. But obviously we're in this time machine looking at all of these transits, and I'm sure time will fly, no doubt, as well. So yeah, it's the 13th of January, the second time that this takes place at 6 degrees and 20 bits. However, the last perfection will be only 5 months later in May, and that will be 8 degrees and 49 bits on May the 10th. And by which time we think this is the last perfection. This would be the big, oh, it's here kind of job. We've managed to manifest what was coming slowly but surely. It's like a wax on, wax off jobby, if you will. You need to get to this or to what will be brought around these times, but there's some things that need to happen to bring that around, whether it's a new economy, whether it's a new style of community or a new style of technology, or the eradication of a lot of crime. This can be a time of grand awakening in many of those areas, if not all of them. We see that Jupiter's gone all the way into Virgo by this point. And although I said this is the last perfection of this aspect, there are 2 other close calls. In April, early April 2009, they they come as close as 1 degree because they part a lot here. And if you look at this, actually, Pluto just stationed retrograde at the time of this perfection in May 2028, whereas Uranus is moving direct and goes forward quite a far amount to the point that they have a large space between the pair, and they're not even in the orb anymore, if you will. If we go like it's like 8 degrees here, and so that's quite broad. And so Uranus stations retrograde, and then Pluto stations direct, and they do come back. And as I said, by April, they're within a degree of one another again, which is pretty cool. April the 1st, I think, April the 4th. Yeah, so 11 degrees is Uranus, whereas Pluto 10 degrees. But then they do part again as far as a 10-degree orb by September, the end of September 2029. We want to keep an eye on Saturn and Jupiter because they're coming into their opposition around this time. They will oppose each other a few times in the fixed signs, Taurus, where Saturn is, and Scorpio, where Jupiter will be. And then they change into mutable signs. And this is interesting because I feel like these two energies, they relate. The diversity and the revolutionary energy of that which is manifesting is really never been seen before. And it's like these two aspects are complement to one another, the Saturn Jupiter and this Uranus Pluto. They're different energies, but they're similarly constructive. And so it is that actually they come back to, as I said, it's September the 29th. I was showing you at the end of September here. They're so far apart, 10-degree orb. Like Pluto's retrograde at 8 degrees, you've got Uranus at 18 degrees, but they do come back one last time to trine within a 3-degree orb by March 2030. So I thought it's important to highlight and to share all of these dates. Um, because this is going to change our reality. This is going to change our lives. And we can see that it comes into the full manifestation of what was the Great Conjunction with these oppositions taking place. So this is like the lubricant or the change, and this is the manifestation. This so Jupiter at 27 degrees of Scorpio station retrograde, it will come back deeper into Scorpio, and Saturn's going to go off into Gemini, but then they're going to oppose each other again. Uranus is going to speak another like 3.5 years to go, or like 3 years or so before it goes into Cancer, and Pluto will be in Aquarius until 2042. But this bridge between now, 2025, and 2030 is going to be so diverse and innovative, so revolutionary. The world is not going to look the same to the world that we were born into, or even the one that we discover ourselves in right now. This is a really broad topic, and I'm looking to continue to research it, to plow into it, to perceive it, to experience it within our realities. And I'm excited to see any contributions that you may have, any ideas that you feel that this could be, how this could be manifesting in such a revolutionary, paradigm shattering way. These are two of my favorite planets. They're transpersonal because they affect entire generations at a time. So they shift our consciousness in a way which is so dynamic that our parents can't relate and our children won't relate. But this is for us. This is our time. We're the movers and shakers, and we're inheriting this world. So how are we going to recreate it? How are we going to play our role? Very exciting. Inheritance is much more potent than history. It's her and his. How are we going to receive the world and cultivate it with love? I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for allowing me to create this video and share it with you on this Time Lords magazine YouTube channel. My name's Philip Daniel Miles. I am an astrologer, and this is an absolute gift to be able to connect with you. I look forward to sharing more in the not too distant future. Cheerio for now.